Welcome back to Flashback Friday, brought to you by ClioVis. Today, we're diving into the story of one of the most iconic brands in history. Whether you're a fan or not, you've undoubtedly come across the legendary Apple logo that's recognized worldwide. In case you haven't looked at the date, it's January 3rd, and in January 3rd, 1977 marked a pivotal moment in Apple Incorporated's history. It was the day the company was officially incorporated as Apple Computer Inc. This formal incorporation represented a major step in transforming the small garage-based venture into a legitimate business organization. This milestone signaled Apple's shift from an ambitious startup to a company poised to revolutionize the tech industry. But let's dive into the history it took for Apple to make these big accomplishments. I'll pass it over to one of our talented ClioVis interns.
Apple's journey from a garage startup to the world-leading technology company showcases its transformative impact on the technology industry. Explore through this timeline how Jobs and Wozniak went from creating the Apple I to developing and founding Apple Incorporated on January 3rd, 1977. Where all this began, though, is a common misconception. Even though it did start in Steve Jobs' garage, it actually began with Stephen Wozniak and the Altair 8800. He was inspired by this because it was the first microcomputer created, although it had none of the features that we know in today's computer. But this is what led him to reach out to his former classmate, Steve Jobs, and together they built the Apple I with another partner, Ronald Wayne. However, this product was not successful. It was very expensive for what it could do, and it was not even a full kit. You had to buy other parts to go with it. Ronald Wayne eventually bowed out and sold his shares. But not all hope was lost. In fact, the Apple I drew the eye of an angel investor, Armas Clifford Mike McCullough, and he invested $250,000 into Apple, and with his business expertise helped found Apple Incorporated in 1977 on January 3rd. Because of this, he became the CEO, but in 1983, he decided that he wanted to step away as CEO of Apple Incorporated, and he asked Steve Jobs to find his replacement, which is where the famous line, "Do you want to sell sugar for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world?" came from. This was what Steve Jobs asked the current president of Pepsi, John Sculley, and in 1983, he was appointed the CEO position. However, just 2 years later, Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak steps down from the company because he didn't agree with the direction that it was going, especially with the Lisa and the Macintosh. But the horrors of 1985 were not over yet, because that same year, the other co-founder, Steve Jobs, also was pushed out of the company, essentially, by the CEO that he appointed, John Sculley. People felt that he was causing a lot of infighting, and the board told Sculley to limit his job responsibilities. So instead of being fired or feeling limited, Steve Jobs left and started his own company, which was later bought out by Apple. And after only 10 years as CEO, John Sculley resigns. This was following a 97% decline in profits. And between John Sculley resigning and in 1997, there were two other CEOs who also were pushed out of the company. Ultimately, Steve Jobs was brought back to the company and officially promoted in 2000 to CEO. One of his first tasks was to create an alliance with their biggest competition, Microsoft. But the time of Steve Jobs as CEO is often referred to as the new wave, because Steve Jobs and Apple launched a variety of new products, including the iTunes Store and the iPod, which was a handheld device, as you can see here, that contained thousands of songs within the device. It was a portable unit that was simple and compact, making it very user-friendly for people. It was a newer technology of this time, and it also began to launch their first Apple stores, which now we can find within every major shopping center. That isn't what made Apple one of the biggest technology companies. It would be the iPhone, released in 2007, that became one of their most popular products. It was the first phone designed to be portable and handheld by users. It also contained applications such as cameras, calendars, photos, note-taking abilities, messaging, and phone calls. And it is so successful that as of 2024, Apple has released the iPhone 16. Between Steve Jobs becoming CEO in 1997 and when he resigned in 2011, several products have been released that have made Apple the biggest tech company in the world, including the iPad, the MacBook, the iPhone, the iPod, and more that you can explore within this timeline. But in 2011, Steve Jobs resigns, and the current COO, Tim Cook, took over as the new CEO. Steve Jobs had to leave for health reasons, such as suffering from pancreatic cancer, and is quoted saying, "I have always said that if there is a day where I can no longer meet my duties and expectations as Apple CEO, I'd be the first to let you know. Unfortunately, that day has come." He requested to remain as chairman of the board, but unfortunately passed away 2 months after this. This is what led Tim Cook to become the CEO, and he still holds this position. His journey didn't start easy, though, because after Steve Jobs resigned, Apple stocks dropped nearly 5%. He also took a different direction than Jobs had, and instead of consistently releasing new products, he just evolved their current products and released updated versions of products that were already successful, which is very different from what we see in the 80s and 90s with the Lisa and the Macintosh. There were other platforms that were released, such as iCloud and Apple Pay, that focused on innovation, but ultimately, this ever-evolving string of products is what made Apple the first company to be worth $3 trillion. And it saw a 40% increase in sales in 2021, which is what led it to become the first $3 trillion company. But this was not a new milestone because they were also the first company to be worth $2 trillion, and they are expected to become the first company to be worth $4 trillion. This shows how Apple has consistently driven technological advancement and achieved remarkable financial success from its early days with the Apple I to becoming the first $3 trillion company. Apple continues to innovate, adapt, and shape the future of technology. Its legacy as a pioneer in personal computing and consumer electronics remains unparalleled by competitors. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to follow us for more engaging content. Every Friday for the next few weeks, we'll be sharing fascinating stories about historical events that took place on Fridays. Stay tuned for more fun and intriguing history brought to life with ClioVis. Ready to create your own timeline? Start your ClioVis journey today at ClioVis.com and dive into history like never before.